we do have a tendency at NGIC to get the most that we can from all the brilliant people that we have participating at our events. So while we value social interaction, we value relaxed time during the lunch and dinners, those of you who are not the first time at our events might have noticed that we do quite a bit of talking during lunch and dinners at times as well, so that we do have that benefit of really interacting as much as possible to the best of our abilities and the time that is allowed for that with everybody that is around and participating in the events. And I'm particularly pleased that today we have this discussion that is dedicated to leadership of women and the role that they are playing for the development of our own countries and then development globally, and then why inclusion and then better opportunities of providing the platform for women to lead and then contribute delivers common prosperity and development and better world in the way that any representative of any gender could prosper and then have a good life and then have respect for human rights and then have not the sense of uncertainty as we have discussed quite a lot during the past discussions, past days and today in the morning as well, but more of a sense of hope and excitement for the future that all of the technological developments and progress that otherwise we do as humanity could benefit better and be more accessible and more hopeful and exciting for especially our younger generation and us as well in that regard in our lifetime. So I want to greet our speakers today. I don't want to have too much of an introduction from my side, but rather to give the floor to them to speak from their perspectives. They have had and continue to have not just great careers and contributions from the positions that they have served to the public and to the global community, but they continue to do so now as well. We have a very diverse representation in that sense, different angles that could be touched in that regard, experiences, and I want to have the beginning of the intervention quite free for you because you have so much to tell and then so much to cover, and I don't want to frame it in any ways that my introduction could bring more of the shape and form to it in terms of expectation. I'll start, Anaclaudia, with you as the first speaker. And please, if you could share your thoughts about the issues that we're covering today.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I would like to connect also to the discussions that we had yesterday, also some informal conversations, because these informal spaces that you have been providing to me, to us, I found very, very valuable around the table these last 2 days. For me, it's very, very clear that we go nowhere if we don't have a change of our mindset, not only having more women in leadership position in decision-making spaces, but also if we don't incorporate and mainstream kind of more feminine or female-oriented approach of work, of collaborating and of taking decisions. And this should come very strong. I'm very happy, Eka, that I have 2 sons. They are in their 30s, and I see how, at least, you know, they and some of their generation that I have been in touch to, they already think differently. And it's very interesting. One example is that when my son went to his master's degree, he said, I want to discuss with you because I'm looking for a supervisor. I have these options. I would like to have your opinion, but I think I really need a female supervisor because the area of study and her perspective and everything. So I thought it was really great to hear that, right? In my field of work, in our field of work, we see how relevant women leadership is at various levels. For example, at the grassroots levels. We saw during COVID, Eka, Patricia, and colleagues, how important the role of community leaders, especially women, was in mobilizing communities and working with communities to identify what was the situation and to pave the way to design protocols to attend COVID, to pave the way to expand the access to health services, especially in slums. and how they understood that if they wouldn't come together as a coalition, as a community, they wouldn't overcome. So like these common kitchens that we saw in slums in Peru, in Bolivia, all over in Latin America, but also in India. So this was essential for us to have resilience at this point in time, and they were key players. Mayors, women mayors. We don't have much information, unfortunately. We tried to make a survey. We found only around 145 municipalities where there is gender parity and so on, but we have tens of thousands of municipalities. I don't know how many women mayors we have around the world in terms of parity. But we see emerging and great ideas coming out of women mayors. For example, the former mayor of Bogota, she came with a program called Neighborhoods of Care. So she used the urban plan, the master plan, to earmark areas in the city, neighborhoods, and to make sure that in these areas that were more in need, there would be a cluster of services so that the woman could literally leave the house in the morning, drop the kid in one place, drop the abuela in another place, the grandma in another place, and drop the laundry in another place, and go to do whatever. Study, learn, work, explore, evolve, etc. So we see also Mayor of Banjul developed a very interesting program to protect women through shelter and housing victims of GBV and so on. I see there is now a movement of parliamentarian women working around this idea of cities of care. So this is a totally new trend that's coming around urban planners, so that we see the whole city as a place of care, make sure that that we are walking. So it really makes a difference on housing, which is the focus of our work, and I spoke a lot about housing yesterday. Also examples of how land and housing, how important it is to expand the rights and to recognize the rights of female women, young girls, to really have the property in their name, and the houses in their name, and the difference it makes. My own experience, very interesting experiences that I have in Brazil when I was working in the city. We had women leaders, social movements. They changed the law at the city level, and they required us working for the city to put all houses in the name of the women. Mm-hmm. Why? Because what happened before is that we would give the houses in the name of the man would leave. And the women with the kids, sometimes with the stepmother and everything, to the street, and the woman wouldn't have access or right to subsidies afterward. Mm-hmm. It evolved into a national thing. They required later on that the national program would have the same feature. So now over 85% of the housing provided by the government through subsidies, they are in the name of women. And even the civil code was changed in case of divorce. It goes in name of women because they really need this stability. At the end of the day, by evidence, by data, we know that they are the ones that end up being taking all the responsibilities as heads of households, and especially in countries where the welfare state is not so robust and established, the housing is a critical space for them. But beyond that, and now connecting a little bit, and I hope Patricia can elaborate a lot more on that, because we spoke a lot about that, and thinking about multilateralism and the scarcity of resources that we are facing now as UN agencies. I do think that a critical way out of that is through collaboration. And through partnerships. And I think we have, in our trajectories, I do have in my trajectory, Patricia for sure, I'm sure you and others here been talking about, how we were able, through collaboration, share, work together around generating public goods, around the common good, around common action, and connecting assets and bridging resources. Because the reality is that we are all suffering within the UN, now coming back to the UN, a changing of landscape in terms of development systems, IDA, ODA, and so on. So how can we overcome that, right? For me, the only way out is through partnerships, so through coalitions where we combine the different assets. And I think, and I take the liberty to say that this is a kind of feminine or a kind of more female approach that we need to mainstream. We all need to believe that this is the way out, this is the way, the only possibility that we have to overcome this major challenge that we have in the planet. One of the things that we have been discussing a lot throughout these UN reforms, the UN became very projectized and very competitive. Even within UN Habitat, we see competition. So how can we move to a more collaborative scheme where the different UN agencies can work together, where our teams can work together, and look together for solutions and together for resources. I spoke a lot. I will stop now.
It's very good to listen to you. And thank you for being very open in your vision of laying out how much female leadership, it's not about grandiose ambitions per se, even though we are not it's not something that we are not keen to as well, but it's more about pragmatism, and it's about delivery, it's about impact, and do whatever it takes to deliver the impact. And in that regard, having that mainstreamed in the way that there is a level play field. We're not talking about the privileges, we're not talking about the special quotas, we're not special in an approach in which there needs to be some privileges unnecessarily so given to women, but rather how we all tap into that potential by giving the level play field for women to perform to the best of their abilities. And in that regard, especially in your area of operation, when hands-on approach matters so much, when how we live can be defined in the way how collaborative approach is for those who lead, and then really connected with people that they serve, it's extraordinary in that sense. This is indeed the connection that in many ways in politics especially have been lost between people and then between those that they are supposedly to serve, and then be mindful of their needs and then their well-being. And in that regard, indeed, as you have mentioned, female leaders do have a very outstanding and good track record, so it should be very smart to tap into that and then give them the best abilities to do so. Patricia, the floor is yours.
Firstly, can I just say a big thank you to NGIC for bringing us all together? Because if we just look around this table, you'll see that there is actually a fair gender balance and representation. And I don't know about many of you, but when I started my profession, and of course I'm only 21, in 1977, my profession, there were 97% male and 3% female, and of that 3%, 0.0000001% were black female. So to be in a room with so much inclusion, I think is really important, but also what the last 2 days has demonstrated to us is the richness of that engagement between men and women who have had a real contribution to make. 50-50 is, of course, the aspiration everyone has. But 50-50 is really because talent comes in a multiplicity of shapes. And if we deny ourselves the opportunity to take advantage of female and male leadership working together, then we're depriving our countries of an opportunity to really do well. And multilateralism needs that collaboration more than anything. I should make a few confessions, because of course I too have 2 sons, but I have 7 brothers and 4 sisters, and I was brought up by one of the greatest feminists I've ever met, which was my father, who believed that his girls could do anything his 7 sons could do only when my mother wasn't looking, he'd say, only better. So I just want to say to all the men around this table, there's an amazing role that you have to play and may already play. And I want to thank all of you for the roles you've undoubtedly played if you have daughters, because that is a huge contribution. But why do I say it's so important for us to understand other and take advantage of the talents of all of us? It's primarily because what I have learned is that inclusive delivery of policy is the only way, as I said earlier, that you get the best delivery. And having women engaged in that is fundamentally important. And I'll just describe to you how the approach to problem solving has delivered. And many people have told me that they think this is maybe a more feminine approach. And that is, there is a tendency to look first to what joins us as opposed to what separates us. And I am clear that my history has forced me to that conclusion. My mother is a very devout Catholic, my father is a very devout Methodist, and I grew up next to an Orthodox shul. So inclusion was very much part. But what I discovered is that if you start first by identifying those things upon which you absolutely are implacably in disagreement, it is unlikely that you'll ever get to the things with which you agree. And one of the ways in which we've approached it is by, certainly during the Commonwealth, was to identify those things that we didn't agree with, put them to one side, and then look at those things we could agree. And what we found out was normally 99.9%, but like our DNA, were the same. And we could agree. And then we looked at those things and we agreed them. Once we'd contextualized the things upon which we agreed, we were then able to look at the things that we were implacably opposed to. And what we found was 50% of those things that we thought we were implacably opposed to, we could agree, and the other 50% we could disagree well. And it is a method of collaboration. The understanding that each of us have skills, talents, gifts, but they're different. And that if we listen to each other and collaborate with each other, we will be able to solve many more problems. And certainly, that's been the basis of successful multilateral working. But it is a way that I've noticed women feel very comfortable about. When they come together, they tend to ask everybody what they can do to help. And so if you look at the big areas of conflict, and just think about Northern Ireland, an intractable issue for years, 30, 40 years. One of the ways in which that dispute was brokered, peace was brokered, was because the women on both sides of the divide were tired of seeing the people they love, their husbands, their brothers, their sons, their nephews, their friends dying, and were determined that they would come together and build a bridge which would enable peace to take place. The issues in relation to climate change, when you look at people on the ground, who suffers most, who suffers first? It tends to be the women. But who reaches out first? It tends to be the women. We talked earlier today about HIV/AIDS. The women in communities, the nurses, the community workers, they were the instruments who went out and were used and were trusted to make the delivery. In terms of trade, we did a really interesting experiment with small and medium-sized businesses, and we created a network of businesses. And we really helped promote women. What did we find was that the women were absolutely the preferred vehicle for successful delivery. Why? Because they paid the money back, they were trustworthy, and they delivered. And one of the most amazing things we found was that the male groups wanted to trade with the women businesses. And I asked them, why was it? And they said, because you can trust them and because they won't let you down. So it was very interesting. And so I think that we have a huge opportunity, and you can think of this in every single sector, of men and women coming together and sharing and working in a way that benefits both. And I was once told that the smartest thing that a sentient man can do is ask a woman to lead. And the reason is that women will put men first, that they'll put their children and the community next, and they usually put themselves last. So if you really want to be put first, perhaps you should share leadership with women. And I think there's so much that we can do which will deliver that change. But it does, I suppose I want to really underline, it means us doing it together and really respecting each other, respecting the talents that men have, but also seeing the talents that women have too, who can make a contribution.
Thank you, Patricia, and then Hank, for your very candid and personal reflections as well. And then many of us may be sitting in the room as female representatives. We've had that experience of very feminist fathers that regards that really gave that push and incentive for us to grow in the way we did as personalities, as professionals. And then just coming from a very small nation myself, I have to say that when you are not that many, you are forced to make the best of what you have. And in that regard, I've been fortunate, I would say, in my country of having exactly that approach country-wise, when you just tap into talent rather than, looking into who's male, who's female, and then in that regard, how much female could be, less encouraged to achieve more because of that. Because it's the talent and it's the contribution that each and everyone makes to private businesses or the public service makes. And in that regard, smaller nations sometimes are more innovative maybe in that regard because they're forced to from early on to do that. We do not have choice to be distinctive, so to say, in that regard. That then becomes a culture over the centuries in many ways. We have a very special representative at the table to speak with us, dear Hedva. Those of us who are long-time members of the family of NGIC know her very well, know her passion for peace, for multilateralism, her exceptional dedication to do it through culture the way she does, not as just UNESCO representative, but then through practical work through which she delivers that connectivity. So I guess we are really fortunate to have you here speaking at the lunch as well, so that that perspective is highlighted as well through your intervention.
Thank you so much, Edda. And it's a great. Thank you so much, Eka. And it's really a great honor to speak here about this very important topic, leadership, women and leadership, and how we can shape together a more inclusive and resilient world. Thank you, NGIC, of really preparing this wonderful lunch and giving us a possibility to express ourselves. And I think the three women, it's interesting, everybody is coming from another field, and it's important that we are all coming together and discussing, everybody with their own experience. As a woman, as an artist, and a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for Culture Diplomacy, I have learned one essential truth. Peace is not abstract concept. Peace is something that we must build patiently, concretely, and collectively. Women have always been at the heart of peace building, often invisibly, often without recognition, yet women understand deeply that peace is not the absence of war, but the presence of dialogue, education, culture, and dignity. This is where leadership truly begins. My own journey towards peace building did not start in diplomacy, but in art. I believe profoundly that art is a universal language, capable of crossing borders religious, and political divides. Art speaks where words fail. It creates space of listening, empathy, and recognition, all of which are essential foundation for peace. But I also understood very early that inspiration and creation must be followed by action. This is how the idea of the road to peace was born. What began as a sculpture, the Tree of Peace, evolved into a global, tangible initiative, the Road to Peace, as a symbol, yet very real path that connects cities through the installation of the Tree of Peace. Each tree is inaugurated locally with authorities, educators, young people, and communities. Each tree becomes a permanent site for dialogue, peace education, and intercultural exchange. This initiative was recognized and adopted by UNESCO, and today it is supported by 77 member states. The Tree of Peace is now installed in more than 21 locations worldwide, from Jerusalem and Palestine to the United States, China, and most recently, Marawi in the Philippines, a city that embodies resilience after conflict. This is peace building in concrete terms, a permanent presence in public space, an educational tool for younger generations, a platform for intercultural and interfaith dialogue, and a shared commitment between local communities and global institutions. For me, this is what multilateralism is its best, looks like when ideas become structure, when values become programs, and when leadership translates into impact on the ground. Networks such as NGIC play a vital role in this process. They create bridges between women leaders across sectors, diplomacy, culture, education, and civil society. They ensure that women are not only participants in global governance, but decision makers. Gender equality must be placed at the center of institutional reform, not as a moral obligation alone, but as a strategic necessity. Peace processes are more sustainable when women are involved. Effective climate diplomacy likewise depends on the inclusion of all actors, which with women fully integrate, societies are more resilient when women's voices are heard. As the women leaders, we bring a long-term vision. We understand continually transmission and responsibility towards future generations. This is why peace education is central for the road to peace, because peace is not given to us. It is something we must learn to build. In a world facing fragmentation, climate crisis, and rising violence, we must dare to build peace not only through negotiations, but through culture, education, and shared humanity. I remain deeply convinced that every concrete act of peace matters. A sculpture in a city, a dialogue between cultures, is a new path towards lasting peace. This is how peace begins, not in words, but in action that unite humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Hedva. It's a very good reminder to all of us that when we speak about anything, and especially peace and security, it's frameworks, it's processes, but ultimately it's healing and commitment to the peace that comes from societies and then human beings within those societies, and then to be a bridge and connector, and then have a symbolic representation of that through with sculptures as you do. It's not just having the sculptures in those cities. The cities commit to that symbolism, and then they They are part of the process and part of the movement. And we tend to forget in the business of our lives that how much that healing for societies when they're going through the either transformation or to the crisis or through the war for that matter is an essential part for the real peace. And it's not something just can be only signed on the paper. And while listening to you, and then I wanted just to highlight, I guess, that we do still live in times when it's not about the leadership, only about the women, but about the very fundamentals of their personal security and fundamental freedoms that they are fighting for. And women in Iran are a representation of that right now for quite some time. And then their bravery is exceptional in the way that they showcase that. And then women in Ukraine, the representation in so many ways right now of how victimized women can be in the war situations more because they are physically thought to be weaker. And then in that regard, while many female soldiers and drone operators are fighting the war in Ukraine, the numbers of abuse and crimes, war crimes and crimes against humanity committed against them is staggering in Ukraine. So I guess it's a moment for us to remember women that are still fighting for very fundamental rights and then right to exist even in so many cases as well. So that tribute to them. This is an open conversation that we have around the table. It's not a formal Q&A session that we might have, and then I will encourage our speakers as well to contribute more with their thoughts and reflections. But then I want to engage all of you around the table as well to have this dialogue and conversation. So please let me know by raising your hand if you or the sign if you would want to comment. Please, Jane.
First of all, I'm so happy we had this session. I think it's really important. All I want to do is add data and studies because there's an increasingly clear body of evidence that says that women and female leadership drives more ambition and greater targets. I've looked at this in the context of climate, but I've also looked at it in the context of all ESG issues. And so I'm just going to talk about the private sector. Corporations that have more women on their boards, and there is statistical evidence on this, show stronger environmental performance, reduced GHGs, reduced water use, increase in human rights kinds of issues, increase in transparency, increase in diversity. And by that, I don't mean gender or race. I mean ways of thinking, background, et cetera. But the bottom line in all this is that when there are greater number of women, the ROI and the returns have been bigger. So this isn't any kind of soft, girly thing. This is hardcore business people that are women being involved, having a direct impact on the corporate rate of returns. So I think it's important to remember and not sell ourselves short, because in all these ways we contribute to profitability on all sorts of issues. So,
Thank you. Great contribution, Jane. And then I was expecting no less than that from you when it comes to the data and then real reference points in that regard. Anybody else would want to comment from Benita? Oh, please.
Excuse me, please.
Well, no, no, it's a follow-up to what Jean said, because I'm a feminist, and I'm a feminist because I'm a hard-nosed economist. And let me explain my experience with that. I was responsible at the World Bank for the MENA region. In the MENA region, one of the big issues is female labor force participation. There is a big divide between, a big difference between male and female labor force participation. And you calculate, although the girls go to school, they go to universities, but then they stay at home. This is the social norms. And you calculate that if you actually get women in the MENA region to participate in the labor force at the same level as men, the overall GDP of the region would be like 10 or 15% higher. Then I left MENA, and I became responsible for Sub-Saharan Africa. In Sub-Saharan Africa, a different situation. Women actually participate in the labor force just as men. However, they do not have access to the same production instruments as men, whether it is access to land, they're given the worst type of land, whether it is access to finance, and so on. Again, we calculated that if the women in Sub-Saharan Africa were given the same access to finance, to land, and to fertilizers and whatnot as men, GDP would be much higher. I forgot the number, but it would be 6 or 7% higher. So because of that, I've become a feminist. So I became a feminist not because my daughter is a girl, not because my wife is a woman and my mother is a woman and my sister is a woman, but I became a feminist because I'm an economist.
Thank you. Benita, please.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, well, first of all, I think we women, we give birth. That means life is very important to us. And that shows everywhere. Wherever there is a conflict, I think we try in some way or another to solve the conflict because we don't want people to lose their lives. I think this is really a general consideration. Second, I think we are quite concrete in general, and we don't look so much to our egos, but we look to the issue that we would like to be solved. I have been working with men and women all my life, in professional life, and I must say I have loved to share, as you said, to share with ones and the others, and this worked perfectly well. So there shouldn't be a difference between men and women, because if we want to work for something, we can do both. We can do both. But I must say there is a huge difference between our countries, developed countries, and developing countries. I also have been Minister for Foreign Affairs and Development Aid. And there, of course, I've seen very difficult things. What you said now on South Africa, I also have to agree. Sometimes women are, although they work a lot and they do sometimes the major work, they are being, I would say, put to the back, and they don't have a possibility to really decide. And the worst for me, and I want to mention that, is Afghanistan. I've been in Afghanistan as a commissioner when there was the possibility for an election. And there were fantastic women that wanted to be and were for a certain moment parliamentarians. But then, of course, the Taliban regime came. And what we see today, I can tell you, it always hurts me a lot. I suffer from only seeing these women humiliated, not existent anymore. Even if a woman gives birth, she cannot have a woman doctor because they are not allowed to be there. How can we accept that? So that is something that really always is very dear to my heart, and therefore I wanted to mention it. Thank you.
Thank you, Benita, for highlighting that. And then I guess that we are still, by sharing all of our reflections, we see the discrepancy and asymmetry is quite high in that regard. What are the challenges or opportunities women face in their lifetime? And it's staggering, I mean, how much, when world is supposedly coming together, I mean, the discrepancies and asymmetries are still so huge and insurmountable to some in the situations where they are right now, unfortunately. Patricia, please, if you want to.
I just wanted to follow up on Jean's comment on the economics, because I think, like her, I'm always fascinated, give me the figures. And just to say that things like domestic violence have huge economic costs. In 2003, I was chair of the Interministerial Group on Domestic Violence in the UK, and we asked a very interesting question. How much was it costing us as a country? And it was costing 23 billion. And 3 billion of that was from public sector, but it had 2.7 billion was in relation to loss of profitability for business, and there was about 17 billion pain, injury, loss and suffering. Now, over the next 7 years, we managed to reduce domestic violence by 64%, and we saved 7.1 billion per year. So it's hard economics. This stuff, as Jean says, is not soft and fluffy. It is absolutely targeted on how you make your country better, faster, more whole, and it has huge economic advantages. If you have an inclusive economy, it's the biggest way of getting what my children would call filthy, stinking rich, just by being fair.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you, Ika. Thank you very much. As a Saudi citizen, I have been witnessing the great transformation that has taken place in my country during the past 15 years. And I grew there, and I had my education until the university in Riyadh, and then I moved to the United States to pursue my higher education. Back to Saudi Arabia after 7 years to teach at the same university from which I graduated, and then left my country to work in an international organization in Morocco for 27 years. But I have been witnessing the great transformation of the conditions of women in my country in all walks of life. In all walks of life, you know, education, healthcare, participation in government work, in the private sector. And I have to say with great pride that women now, who constitute 49% of the population, work everywhere. If you go to Riyadh or Jeddah or any airport, you will be faced, first of all, by women stamping your passport. And you will see them everywhere, in the hotels, in the restaurants, in the universities. There are, you know, university presidents, there are deans of colleges. Even in the Council of Shura, mostly constituted by men and women, but mostly the women are the most vibrant ones in tackling the issues of the society and proposing measures and ideas to improve. Also, I could say that they have entered even the army and the police. And this never happened in my time when I was in Riyadh. You know, you can't see women in the police or in the army, but now they are there. And they are very brilliant young women who are really helping the brothers, the men, and their, you know, noble missions to serve their country. So this great transformation really is very admirable, and I feel proud of it, because during the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, women were marginalized. Yes, they went to schools, they went to study in the university, but they worked only in private sectors. I mean, they don't mingle with men. Now there is no barriers between men and women in all walks of life, in all businesses, in all jobs. So I hope they will continue like that, and we will see a new Saudi Arabia emerging, not the one that has been thought of as a closed country, oppressing women, not giving them the chance to perform and become as good as, or maybe better than their fellow men. And this is really what is happening. Many people don't know about that. And I think the government is blamed that they do not show to the world what has happened in the country during the past 15 years. It is enormous. You cannot believe it. I mean, I think it didn't happen anywhere in the world. And I thank the Crown Prince, because he's a courageous young man. He broke many taboos, and he didn't care, because they were not part of the religion. They were just, you know, falsifications and misconceptions in the minds of the clergymen. But it has no grounds in the religious teachings, because in the Quran it says women are the equal of men. Because, you know, they are human beings in the first place, and secondly, they have the same capabilities. Maybe women are better than men in many cases. So I wanted just to show this to this beloved gathering here as an information. Maybe you can explore this in the media. Thank you very much.
I would love to add what you were talking now, because I really have this experience with women from Saudi Arabia. I'm very much involved with the life of the Saudi Arabian ambassador in Paris for a few years. And I can tell you, we have all the time conference. The wife of the ambassador, she's the first one who's talking about cancer breast. Every year at the day of the cancer breast, she's bringing a specialist from Saudi Arabia, professor, that are talking about it. And it's such an open-minded, and we are talking a real revolution that is in your country. And it's very recent. It's only since 3, 4, 5 last years. And it's remarkable. I see it every time, because maybe I'm invited every 2 or 3 months there. And the progress is immediate. Yeah, it's continuous. It's continuous on. And I just want to add something. If a woman will be on the head of state, they are the one who can better negotiate. They are better diplomats. Men like this war, and women is just the contrary. They are speaking, they are talking, and they're going towards, every event they're going towards the people. And they are such a good diplomat. So I'm sure if we'll have on the head, everywhere we'll have a woman on the head of state, life will be better, and we have less wars in the world. I'm sure about it.
May I add just two examples?
And then we have,
Our ambassador to the European Union in Belgium is a lady. And our ambassador to the United States is a lady. She's a princess. And our ambassador to France, to Madrid is a lady. So this is, in UNESCO, a lady.
and just for,
She's in Spain.
But Rima is in Washington, I
But
know.
the one in UNESCO is in
She
Spain
was,
now.
and she's now in.
I finished, thank you. I finished, just.
it's a leap forward, especially in a country where taboos, as they has been mentioned, with Abdulaziz's reference, with the misinterpretation of the religious provisions, are broken in the way that there's more freedom than entering, and that leap forward in that regard is even more heavyweight when it comes to the resonance that it might have in the future, rather than any breakthroughs in other countries that we might have, where we are perhaps not struggling as much with clerical misinterpretations of some of the religious provisions, which I'm not an expert to comment on. I just refer to what you've mentioned right now. And then, Mehdi, you've been waiting for some time.
Yes, just to bring some remarks from the ground and to complete what my colleague Abdelaziz said, I will speak about the Tunisian experience with this regard. Tunisia, it's a small country with regard compared with the neighborhood. We don't have natural resources. We don't have oil. We don't have gas. And if you examine the success that we get, it does not mean that we are successful everywhere. But the real success that we get is due to two things. Two big decisions, two big actions that we implemented since the first year of the independence in the 1956. The first one is education, but education for everyone. It became the first year mandatory for women and for men. And you go to jail if you don't send your kids and the women to the school. And I think that gave the generation, I'm a part of this generation that was produced by that. The second is to ensure some equality with the woman. So first in the education, but it's more than that. We changed radically the law in Tunisia. The polygamy was aborted, forbidden the first year. And we gave many rights to the woman. And even you compare, I remember when I was a student, I was comparing and to see what is happening in Europe. For example, the vote to the woman was given before the vote to the woman here in Switzerland. The abortion right was given before any country in Europe, many countries in Europe. Well, I remember when I was young, many Italian women, French women coming to Tunisia, and it's Islamic, but we still Islamic. It does not mean, but we have our interpretation of the Islamic. Why I'm saying that? Today, with all the challenges that we are facing, if we are immunate, it's due to these two things, education and the position of the woman. And the position of the woman, in my vision, it's not only a question of a right, human right. It is, but it's more than that. It's to produce a balanced society. And I remember once I was convincing people to invest in Tunisia for the future and telling them that it's a big opportunity and a big historical window for the progress and to create a soft power in the region. And my main argument that we have a balanced society, women and men, so that we can run correctly, not only with one leg, but with two legs. So really, if there is something to do, if there is any investment to do before any industrial, before infrastructure, it's in the education and in the both gender.
Thank you very much for your comments, and quite enlightening to me because I didn't know some of the facts that you mentioned about the voting rights, for example. We pride ourselves in Caucasus, in Azerbaijan, in Georgia as well, that it was the first republics in the 1920s when we've been liberated at the time, briefly, unfortunately, from Russian Empire, but we had the social democratic new republics. Women were not only voting, but they were voted in the legislature and in the government, even at that time. But I'm very pleased to hear the news from your country as well, because I didn't know about that, so it's quite interesting to know that. Yeah, Peter?
Thank you. I think gender equality is strongly related to the way the boys are educated with respect to the girls, to women. I remember very vividly, I was 10 years old when my grandmother, who was Spanish, Basque Spanish, very strong, very religious woman from the province of Guernica, told my mother, who of course was also Spanish, told my mother, her daughter, "My girl, all men are our sons."
Jean?
Just a quick comment. It's a build on Hafaz and on Mehdi, I believe, comments. Many of you know I've been involved in the human trafficking and modern-day slavery fight for almost 20 years. And some of the work we did on that was to take a look at what are the correlates of slavery and human trafficking and risk, and how do you mitigate those. And in the course of that, we did the massive correlation analysis, and if it would cover that whole wall there. And the single biggest factor in GDP in Africa countries is the education of girls beyond grade school. Single biggest factor, 4% on GDP. So I thought I wanted to build on your comment of where education really has an impact. And as for Saudi, 25 years ago when I was going there, I'd get fitted for an abaya at the Bahrain border, and you wore an abaya, and you could only go to the gym during lunchtime when no one else went to the gym. And all that's changed, and it changed pretty quickly, shockingly so. So I would support some of that. Not that there aren't some other issues, but
I'm just trying to look around the table to...
I wanted to add something. I don't know if you said it, that the first vote in Azerbaijan for women, it was in 1918, and in my country, France, it was only in 44.
Yep.
So it's really an example to the world.
Unfortunately, Red Soviets came too quickly to our countries and then took all the progress away and captured us in the Soviet Union for quite a long time. But that had a very good beginning at the time. Would have been in a different place if that would have continued. I'm looking around the table. I don't see any raised hands, so that I do have this question myself, perhaps, and I would ask speakers maybe to comment first on that. We are representing one generation in many ways in terms of the development of politics and then in international relations. And we do have children that are representing completely different generations as well, right? Those that are, we would hope, more progressed, more educated, and then representing different ideas and visions for humanity in the future. Do you think that there is some leap forward that the younger generation already has more naturally in this area, that there is an inner understanding that equality matters, it's more productive, it's better for common prosperity, and it's just natural, not something that you can need to fight for? I mean, when I talk with my daughters, they don't even fully understand this issue because they don't think that maybe they've been fortunate enough not to be in the situation when they had to experience an inequality themselves. But for them, it's a natural premise that equality is given. It's nothing that you need to fight for in that regard. But it's a small section still, I would say, perhaps when we compare globally. How much we take it for granted, perhaps, that generational change has happened, or we're still in this fight in the way that we need to still double down efforts when it comes to education, understanding, awareness. Are we in a somewhat good place relatively, or it's still a fight is going on in that regard? It's a loose question, I understand, but if you could, share your reflections, if you want.
Yeah. After I spoke about my own sons, and I was cautious enough to say, around their circles, because I don't have the full answer to your question. I think there are spaces where, yes, this is happening, and there are spaces where that's not happening. When I think about myself, when I grew up, and I cannot explain why, I mean, perhaps the privilege that I had in the situation I grew up and everything, my parents, but I never thought about that. For me, I was equal. I was equal. And then I started to realize the differences, the injustices is much later. And I remember when I first realized it was a big frustration. I have a vivid memory. I said, okay, so it's not the same, right? There's a funny story even when I remember now, I was, I think, 8 years old, and I was asked, my father is from the army, was from the army, and there was an event at school, and he was very well known at this city, small city, and they asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? But I would understand, they told me, that you would go to the army like your father, but you're not allowed because they don't take women. And I was 8 years old. I said, what? They don't take women? And I said, okay, then I will be the president, I will be the boss. But anyway, just to say, we took it for granted, and it is not. So I'm cautious about that. I see different streams. I heard from my kids that there are streams that are very, that are very regressive right now at this point in time. There are movements of women of going back to be housewives, typical things, and this kind of mentality. This is ongoing. But on the other hand, the Me Too movement also proved that there is a big, large groups of women that are aware and engaged. When we look at the movies, for example, and art, you spoke about art, you see that in the different realities and so on, there's a different mindset to that. And I would hope that the stream is kind of changing. But I think it still requires a lot of efforts by ourselves, by all of us, to change that. And this is on the daily work that we have. Like, for example, things like somebody said, we have here gender equality. So let's make sure that every conversation, every meeting at UN Habitat, I try to require that every mission, for example, has gender parity. Because then, they will come back from the mission with a kind of balanced perspectives. That in meetings, we make sure that we have, equal presences, and we also open spaces because still women sometimes and many times, they don't take their position, that they are given, and they don't talk. So really make this effort to listen to their perspectives, and also identify what kind of strategies and what kind of really pragmatic actions can be taken in each occasion, a company, public sector, NGO, and so on, to really make sure that this balance is there, because it is about everything we spoke about, the type of leadership, collaboration, but it is about also things that are, intrinsic to us, right? How we value intuition, for example, right? And how we are able to use that. And this is an important aspect of when you take decisions and so on. And trust, how we really work around trust and this feminine emotions. Yeah, why not being mad where we should be mad, right? and really acknowledge our emotions and be human ourselves. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, probably not.
It's something that is very generic in that sense, and then maybe it bothers me too much these days as well, while observing the level of polarization in different societies that we have, because uncertainty drives fear, and fear drives or is utilized as a tool and medium for polarization, and that fragments our societies internally, and then that fragments our societies in international relations as well. And in that regard, some of the new tendencies that you have mentioned, you see the signs of that as well, that it goes into the issue of gender as well, as if by camping and then clustering the different dangers and having them put against each other is a way of mobilizing your own base in that regard, rather than having that commonality of the cause driving us together to deliver better. And in that regard, it might be two streams in some regards. Progressive in a sense of progression of where we are as, societies, by utilizing all of the potential that we have in the most productive way, or it's the progression in the way where we're going backwards, where we are thinking that if I'm stronger, this is the only way for me to survive, whatever the definition of that group is. And it's through the art, through the movies, through the news feeds, and through our lives that I'm looking to, that we see the signs of both of them. I have two speakers right now that have raised their hands, but Patricia will be the first as the speaker, and Miroslav, you will be the next, and then Boris, you will be the next after.
I think in many ways we have made very significant progress if you look at the number of people entering the professions and where we are, but in a number of ways we haven't, because there may be more women going into professions. I'll take mine as a lawyer. 50% of the people now going in are women, but if you look at how many Supreme Court judges, High Court judges, heads of partnerships, there's not equality. So there's not a reflection of where we should be. So that's number one. So there's still work to do. The other is, I think, that the next generation of women are, in one sense, accepting that it is possible to do more, but many of them are outraged that they should be asked to do everything as well. They think that there was a generation of super women who had to be super wives and super mothers and super workers, and that put an unreasonable burden on them, and that therefore this progression isn't totally what they would like. So I think it's a very mixed picture. I think we've made a huge amount of progress, and we need to make more, because if you look at the data, if we are going to meet our Sustainable Development Goals, if we are going to make the progress that we need, then we're going to have all of us doing it, and women can't be left behind. I remember my mother once saying to me when I was quite young in my teens, she said, it's terrible. We don't let men do anything else on their own. Why do we allow them to run the world? They need our help.
Either way. Miroslav, Boris, and then Walter. That's the sequence of.
Thank you, Eka, and not surprisingly, this discussion shows that full unity around this table, and there is no need to convince each other. I think we all have been champions in our own fields of activities to full inclusion and fair representation of women in public life. And to answer your question, yes, I think that there has been a leap forward, and the young generation really does not ask these questions because they take it for normal and for granted that there should be an equality between men and women. But I would like to link this discussion to the rough geopolitical realities now, because the fact that the public opinion and public awareness has changed did not happen by itself. There has been a very strong campaign led by the United Nations in the first place, education for years, and that really has achieved results. And I think we need to give credit to Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who has been a very strong promoter of equal representation of women, and he achieved that in the top level and mid-level management. But now, the geopolitics has transferred from transformative to transactional. And we see this also in changed language when it comes to women in leading roles. When we compare, for example, the resolutions dealing with the selection of the next UN Secretary General compared to the last elections, the language on preferring the women candidates has been weakened. United States have said clearly that the gender is not a factor. Russia and China, for them, that it has never been a factor. So that means my question or my worry is, what if there will be no longer the support for United Nations to be the leader in the educational campaign? What if there will be not enough budget for continuing this campaign? So we cannot take what has been achieved for granted. How can we make sure that what has been achieved will be preserved and there will be no backtracking on this issue? So this is why, because when we speak about the geopolitics, we speak about peace, we speak about conflicts, we speak about absence of real dialogue, but I think that the equal representation of women in public life is also part of the discussion, and how to avoid this being another victim of this global geopolitics.
Then one of the ways how the member states could show the continuous commitment to the trajectory is actually to do what is expected to be done, having a next Secretary General, a female one perhaps. So that could be one of the strong showings for that, I would believe. Boris, please, the floor is yours.
Just one intervention. When I was reading kind of researches about participation of women in politics, in the public affairs, I saw the main problem, which is insecure. That is a feeling, and women were insecure. To be very frank with you, I don't know why. I always considered women smarter, more focused, more disciplined than men. And when the big companies are doing headhunting, they are analyzing how some candidates has been behaving during the childhood. And when we are analyzing the young girl and young boys, you can see that on the street. Young women, the young girl is a focus. She's happy, but she's much more focused. Young boys are totally lost in the world. I mean, young boys not able to understand reality, and this is why yesterday I said until 68, man is a boy. But I don't know why that is a problem. This is very interesting. What is a foundation on insecurity? That is what we have to analyze and to find a solution for that. Without, this is crystal clear, without participation of women in the political arena, we don't have a normal world. We don't have a different kind of philosophy, aspect of analysis and something like that. We are whole only if we have also women in the club. And this is very interesting how we can encourage young women in Africa, for example, in Asia, in Europe today, to participate in politics, which is not easy. But I think that we have to find what is a key problem right now and to work on that in educational system, in the elementary school, in the kindergarten, in the families. This is what I think right now.
Thank you, Boris. And then it's not an exhaustive, perhaps, answer that I could give, but as a as a woman who has been in the politics for quite a while, I think part of insecurity is not insecurity for your physical presence or anything related to that. Women have shown in many revolutionary processes, not just in Iran right now, but in Southeast Asia, in Africa, they are at the front in so many ways. It's this challenge of losing the privacy almost to the fullest that when you enter in the public service, and then how to preserve a little bit of safe space for your family in the way that toxicity of the politics is not affecting them. And women are more sensitive to that, as I can say, rather than male ones. It has been a challenge for me, for example, to have my young children and my husband being protected in the way that my fights were my fights rather than their fights. And for women, I think that is part of it, at least that I can tell from my perspective. And this is becoming a common challenge for male and females in so many ways these days, with the social media and then toxicity that comes with it, and speed of information circulation that could be affecting. But it's not physical insecurity, it's not physical or anything related to your well-being, but mostly I would say
It is true.
that's one. Walter, if you allow me just for one, sure,
Quickly. There are numbers that are showing. I've been talking to women mayors in Europe that have suffered. I was recently in a luncheon only with women mayors, and what they reported in terms of violence that they are suffering, there's a social media violence, there are physical threats against them, and many are not running again because they are being threatened. In Latin America, they are dying. In Mexico, women mayors are dying. Yeah. So I think there is, I think
physical
Sorry
security.
for interrupting, but this is interesting.
Yeah.
In the public arena, women is insecure because of different social media and something like that, and the women is a easy goal. I mean, can be victimized, but in the home, things are changing. When you're opening doors, closing doors, the boss is a woman.
I think that part of the thing is that you are not insecure if you make the decision to be. I've never felt insecure myself, but I understand what is the calculation you make when you enter in the public service. And when you enter, believe me, you are not insecure. You go to the end, but you make the decision. When you make a decision, is it worth for you to do it or not? And some women might decide that it's not, because they would rather decide to have more security. But when you are in, I can assure you, you are not insecure, and then you can be even more secure than many men are outside or inside. So that's not the question, whether you continue to be insecure.
Well, I do not want to start with the issue of femicides, but I go back to a famous writer. Oscar Wilde was once asked, "What is an expert?" And he answered, "An expert is a man who is giving advice when he is not at home." That says quite a lot. Peter Ustinov, who was living very close to Geneva, the famous author, he was, as a young kid, refugee coming from Russia to London. Later on, when he was living here, close to Geneva, he started to finance 2 chairs, one at the university in Hastings, one in Budapest, to make studies how to best abolish prejudice, and also prejudice regarding women and equal treatment of both sexes. At the World or UN Summit 95 in Beijing, the Women's Summit, my country's chief of delegation, a lady, she refused to accept a report on giving a voice or to state the issue of women in development countries. So what did I do? I started to produce a CD, a record, giving a voice to women in developing countries through music. Of course, I could not engage politicians. Otherwise, I would have had a big fight. So I said, okay, if we make a deficit, I pay. If we make a benefit, it goes to training women journalists in Africa. I am still the only winner of a golden record in my country in the issue of sampler music, a world music sampler. But when it comes to women and management, I think we have to differentiate between leadership and management. Leadership is not so easy to learn. Many people have it. And I am absolutely sure that the women also have that characteristics of being leaders at all levels. But management you can learn. When I ran that institution, I made a 10-year planning to change the patterns. And the best help I got was from the women themselves, because I offered them a special fund. They could consult the coach to train them so that nobody else in the institution knew about, only me. And that changed the whole pattern, and they really ran and became excellent managers. Then another point, 80% of the small enterprises in my country, backbone of our economy, the finances are ruled by the woman, not by the men. In developing countries, Bangladesh, in Africa, we gave credits only to women because the default rate was 2%. For men, it was 30 to 40%. Yes. And then a very last one. I still pay a lot of tribute to the hundreds of millions of women survival entrepreneurs in Africa and in Latin America and in Asia. So I'm absolutely sure they are entrepreneurs as good as men are. They don't have to give proof every day, they just are. But there is a problem. Many men making military service, they think they are born to manage, but they are not born manager. The others can learn it as well. And I'm absolutely sure we should finish those prejudices and just give equal chances.
Walter, I'll try to remember those figures as well. It was quite enlightening to me. I didn't know about so much difference that we have. Benita, please.
Well, prejudice, I think, is a key word. You're absolutely right. I think, why is it insecurity? I think there are two parts of insecurity. First, the society has traditionally always thought of men in leadership positions or even in managing positions. And therefore, this is still there, very much anchored in our societies. This is one reason. But the other is, and therefore they are not secure if a woman goes to an important post. But the other is that also we women sometimes are insecure. You get an offer that very often has occurred, and you are not sure whether you can accept because we hesitate much more about our qualifications. This is always said. And then we say, we are not sure, can we do this? Of course, there is also the question of family. Can we indeed have the marriage between family and professional life? But I think this is highly important. And here we have to overcome, we women have to overcome this thought. Why should we not do the same job as a man? And sometimes even better.
Yes, Anna.
Thank you, Eka, and congratulations to all of you for those great contributions. I'm not so sure, I was thinking quite hard if I should speak, because I'm not so sure if I'm going to be that popular after what I'm going to say, but I think it's true, and you know, we were talking earlier about the courage to say the truth. Firstly, I am personally very lucky to be in this network because I managed to have developed great friendships with amazing women that has been mentors and from which I learned quite a lot. But in my political life back home, I discovered that actually we were talking among the women, we were talking about the solidarity, supporting the women, promoting the women. I have endless hours in discussions in the women organizations, in the parties, and everybody was claiming the solidarity. And guess what? The first to kill the chances of another young lady entering politics were exactly the women who were in that seat, in the driving seat. So what I've done through my political career, I made a promise based on those experiences from very early on in the party to really have around me young girls, to actually grow them to really be very, not just successful, but actually trusting that it's okay. Because in the end of the world, there is no difference between a man or a woman when it comes to the professionalism. And my first law, I have to say, I'm incredibly proud. In 2012, my first law as a member of the parliament, as a deputy, member of the deputy chamber, was actually the equal opportunity law. So what I've done, it wasn't the law that I drafted. It was drafted by the main NGOs in Romania in cooperation with international NGOs, but they asked me to assume it, and what I've done is I asked all the members of the parliament, doesn't matter which party, if they wanted to sign it, they were signing it. And it was my first law, so in that one, we reinstated the National Agency for Equal Opportunities, which was dismantled earlier by some bad men politicians, if I may speak directly. And most importantly, we put in the law that it equal work, it's equal pay. So can you imagine a EU country in 2012, we had still discrimination when it comes to the, about the payments for the same work. And my philosophy always been, yes, I'm not going to accept that a woman to be promoted just because it's a woman, but certainly I will never ever expect and respect and accept that a woman should not be promoted and be punished and be just kept in the corner, not given the chance to really shine and perform just because it's a woman. And my second law later on was the Istanbul Convention. Romania signed and ratified the law of the Istanbul Convention, which was against the domestic violence, because Walter, you were talking about femicide early on. Yeah, that's another phenomenon. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I would like to see a little bit more solidarity when it comes, real solidarity, translating in facts, when it comes to women. And that way, again, I'm stressing and I'm saying that I'm grateful and honored beyond words that every time I'm coming to an NGIC meeting, for me, it's not just a joy to, to see you all, but actually every single day I'm learning something else. And for me, as looking back since I think 2018 when I came first, it's been a road where I was the most beneficiary because I was picking your brains. We were talking earlier about the track to diplomacy. When you are not in office, you have much more freedom to speak freely about what you think and how do you see things. So to me, it's been a really mentorship experience, both women and men. And as a mother of a son, I can tell you that the best advocates for equal opportunity actually are the men, not necessarily the women in many regards. So thank you.
Thank you. Since we have desserts already served, we are approaching time to wrap up, but you have to, please.
Hi, this is Penny.
This last speaker, do I miss anybody from here? No. Yeah, good.
Hi, Penny from Singapore. I'll keep my intervention really short. Because I think, a lot of the issues related with women leadership, especially if you achieve it young and you're one of the only few females, on whether it's board or in the parliament itself, I think we have all experienced some kind of, let's say, resistance. But at the same time, many of us have also received support from both gender, and I think that's also the only way that we could actually progress in our career. So I wouldn't be laden on some of the negative experience, except I wanted to intervene because it got me thinking. Clearly we need both men and women to work together. Men traditionally have done better, in part because we are in a much more, let's just say, paternalistic environment, but also, that there's boys' club, and we don't really have a girls' club, because the girls often have family clubs instead of just girls' club. So perhaps, yes, I agree, we need to unite a little bit more and consolidate some of our learnings, mentorship, menteeship, that kind of stuff. But what I think is even more pertinent, and is a question that hasn't been on the table, is what does that mean in the intelligent age? Because in the past, there is 2 genders. But now, in the intelligent age, the AI agent is physically gender neutral, but might be programmed by a man or a woman, and that could actually embed some inherent biases. And in fact, they will learn, and they will also become smarter. And of course, the question on the table is, will they outsmart all of us, men or women, so much so that we are out of jobs, we are out of relevance, to the rest of the world for the rest of our lives? Yes. That's an extreme thought, but I think it is, a question that is relevant to our survival, not just survival for the sake of breathing, eating, and sleeping, or speaking, but also, relevance to us in living a meaningful and purposeful life. So I'll leave my thoughts at that.
No, thank you very much. And then it brings and highlights once again that at the end of the day, we might be pushed more than we thought of understanding we're just human beings, so that we need to consolidate and then lead our way forward rather than be fragmented. Two issues that I want to mention from my end at the wrapping up part of our discussion today. One is that I cannot not mention our co-chair, Vaira Vike-Freiberger, who is an embodiment of what the female leadership means. She has been a role model, not just for female leaders, for male leaders around the globe, but for us female leaders. I mean, she has been a North Star in so many ways that we looked up to, and then that strengthened us, inspired us, and then has stood with us in so many ways throughout our partnership and collaboration. And then she's not here today with us, but her presence is always felt, and then her presence is always leads us ahead in so many ways. So tribute to her, and then kudos to what she has done and continues to do as a female leader of that magnitude and scale. Now, coordination meeting, logistics about that as well. After the panel discussions, we'll have a coordination meeting for Baku Forum, which is a must for attendance when it comes to the board members present here, but it's open to any member that wishes to participate and then discuss our vision and planning for Baku Forum for March. So you're more than welcome. So if you wish to participate, please be aware that the doors are open, and it will be appreciated if you do. But for the board members, it's an obligation. So in that regard, that's a little bit of logistics regarding the coordination meeting. And other than that, I just want to thank our speakers for sharing their thoughts, reflections, for being who they are, and then sharing their perspectives with us. I'm sure it's a credit of thanking for the many things in the future that you will do, because you are forces of nature, and you'll continue to push for the cause that you've been fighting for so long and working for. And then I want to have words of appreciation for all of you present at the lunch, sharing your thoughts, and being engaged members of our community and our family that we call NGIC. So thank you, and then we will continue with the rest of the program after the lunch.
And thank you for your amazing moderation.